What's going on, everybody? Welcome into another Big Men on Campus college football preview video. We're continuing our college football conference championship looks into some of the games this weekend. Taking a look now at the Pac-12 title game, Friday, December 6th. The only game this Friday, 8 o'clock Eastern, Oregon and Utah. Utah laying 6.5, total 48.5. This game is in, I believe, Santa Clara. I think that's where these games are. Levi Stadium, where that's where it is, Joe, right? Stanford.
Yes. It is in California.
Yeah.
Yes.
Utah laying 6.5. Joe, look, we know what's on the wall for Utah. Okay, need to set a tone here. Need to win this game. Need to win it, pretty handily, I would imagine. I think if you can win this, 34-13, that could set a nice standard here as we head into the weekend. Obviously, Joe, you kind of are in a situation here where everyone's going to know what you've done as Saturday comes. This game is kind of Joe, let me ask you think that's a disadvantage or an advantage? Obviously disadvantage, right?
Yeah, I saw our buddy Donnie say he felt it was a big advantage for the Pac for the Big 12 teams. I think it's a little bit. I don't really think it comes that much into play. I think all in all, you'd rather have that win under your belt and then sit and, well, I won't say relax, maybe nervously watch. Clearly, they need for LSU to eliminate Georgia and maybe for Baylor to win by 2 points. And, they'll probably be in. But I don't think it's a huge advantage. But if anything, if you're going to ask me to say advantage or disadvantage, I would say it's a slight advantage.
Keep in mind, Utah's one loss was that Friday night game against USC. Obviously, we wouldn't really be talking about them having to do anything. They would likely be in with a win here, but they didn't. They lost. So let's get into the game. Let's see what we got. Joe, I'm going to come out and say it. I like Utah here. I'm going to be real frank with you. I think last week Arizona State really kind of exploited Oregon a little bit for what they are. We look at Utah. I mean, this team has been, frankly, dominant since that loss September 20th. If you look at during this 8-game winning streak, they've outscored opponents 308-76. 5 of those teams were held under 10 points. This has been an impressive unit. And I've been on record as saying I think this could be one of the teams that could give LSU or Ohio State a run. I really believe that. I think defensively they're terrific. They're one of the best run and pass defense in the country. They're always well coached from a special teams perspective under Kyle Whittingham. And you look at this offense. I mean, they've had no trouble throwing the football with Huntley at quarterback. Moss has been one of the best running backs in the country. They have some really high-level defensive backs. I love what they can do. I'm curious, though, with this game. Justin Herbert, as we know, a terrific player, going to be a great player in the NFL, I'm sure. But I think one of his knocks is he has struggled in certain big games. Listen, I love Utah. I love this defense. I think, obviously, like the other game we talked about, I think Utah is just a team that I think will use motivation to obviously run the score up a little bit here, maybe get a 3-touchdown win, 17-point win. How does Oregon stand this game, Joe? Can they stand this game?
I do think they can definitely stand in this game. And in addition to what you were talking about in Utah's only a loss, Zach Moss wound up leaving that game early. So, that was part of the reason why they did lose. And I would agree with you right here on paper. You can make a strong argument for Utah. As I said, when it comes to neutral games, I like to look to see how far each team traveled. Sometimes there's an advantage there. Not so much here. Oregon traveling 467 miles, Utah 589. So, slight advantage for Oregon. I do think, though, the public is going to go crazy over Utah needing those style points, and I think this line will likely be bet up. And, you're right. Certainly the hotter team is Utah. In addition to what you said about Utah outscoring their opponents the last 8 games by 308-76, Oregon's shown some vulnerability last 2 weeks. They've allowed 41 points. And they're playing a Utah team that is ranked 3rd in the country defensively behind 2 pretty good teams, Ohio State and Clemson, in yards allowed, and it leads the FBS in rushing yards at 56.3 points per game. But as you said, Oregon, they do have Herbert, who is one of the better pro prospects at quarterback. So Oregon, if they're going to win this game, it's going to be in the air anyway. I still think, though, I'm not really a conspiracy theorist per se, but it's amazing when it comes to these conference championship games, how more times than not, what the committee needs to avoid controversy usually happens. That's where the upsets seem to happen. their job would be slightly easier, I think, if Oregon pulls off the upset here. Oregon, look, they did lose to they were competitive at Auburn. Of course, they did have a pretty bad loss to Arizona State, although Arizona State really was a pretty good team this year under Herm Edwards. Not like it was a disastrous, but still, that definitely was a bad loss no matter which way you look at it. I just think Utah, because there's more pressure on Utah, Oregon has a chance to play spoiler. They've got a very good quarterback. I think they're going to keep this game very close. When we debate motivation versus pressure, I think if anything, the team that needs to win when they're going against a quality team that has a chance to play spoiler has less pressure. I like the team with less pressure in a spoiler situation. I think Oregon keeps this game very close.
Yeah, I'll be real honest with you. If you told me this number was 7, I'd probably look to take the dog here. I think, obviously it's going to be whether I want to lay 6.5 or I want to take 7. I agree with you. It could be close. You have a good quarterback. You have Dive or Dell. You have some real good skill position players with Oregon. I just look at defensively. I haven't been real impressed with them. Early in the season, I thought they'd played really well, really up until that Colorado game. But again, you look at the teams they played, really outside of Auburn, they hadn't really played anybody up until that Washington game, a game they gave up 31. Then you gave up 35 to Wazoo. You gave up points against USC and Arizona State. And I don't know, they just haven't looked as concise as they had been. But again, I could see it. I could definitely, if this gets to the 7.5, I'd have a little bit more interest in the dog. I don't know if I'll be playing this game. It's a standalone game as well. We know there's going to be tons of action on this one. Joe, real quick, before we go to the last game, who do you think makes the playoff? What are your 4 teams?
Well, I certainly don't think Clemson's going to get upset. Obviously, if Georgia does win, Georgia and LSU are going to be there. Ohio State, I don't think that's going to be an upset. So it's really a matter of, does Georgia knock off LSU? If that happens, I think the playoffs are set with those 4 teams, unless there's a huge upset in the Big Ten or somehow Clemson gets upset. Right, yeah.
So if LSU beats Georgia, who gets 4th spot?
I think it really depends on. I still think Baylor could sneak in there, but I think if Oklahoma and Utah wins, it'll probably come down to those style points, and it's going to be very close. But I do think that Oklahoma would probably be that 4th team if they win.
I remember this summer at Tropicana in Atlantic City, I bet Oklahoma to win the national title, and I actually have Utah as well, so I'm kind of sitting decently. I gotta hope Georgia doesn't beat LSU. That's kind of my thing there. But we'll see, Joe. That's what they make these games for, to play. Joe Duffy, good stuff. We'll catch you on the final video, the American, where we'll also get a plug from you. Thanks, Joe.
All right, thank you, big man.